Hi, everyone. This is Scott Nybakken for Dynamite Entertainment. And I'm talking today with writer Joe Casey about his upcoming crossover miniseries that will unite two classic Hanna-Barbera titles, Space Ghost Johnny Quest's Space Quest. Joe, thanks for joining us on the channel.
Sure, glad to be here, Scott.
So to begin with, can you fill us in on how this particular crossover came about? Was it something that you brought to the editors, or did they approach you with the concept?
No, I brought it to them once we got through the first arc of Johnny Quest. This is the other story I wanted to tell because I'm a huge Space Ghost fan, and it just seemed like the right thing to do. Is not exactly, it's a little highfalutin, but it just felt right. It felt like it was a natural to get these two concepts and characters together, and luckily the editors went for it.
So did the similar or like the two animated shows had a fairly similar origin? They were both Hanna-Barbera productions made in the '60s with character designs by the legendary Alex Toth. Did that drive any of the inspiration for the crossover's plot and storytelling?
Well, not necessarily the plot of the story. I mean, certainly they share that pedigree, which is in terms of comic book artists is as high as it gets with Alex Toth. But really, what I noticed when I looked at both concepts is there's a similarity in setup. There's an adult figure and two younger protagonists, and also the requisite pet that every cartoon show had.
Yep.
I looked at those. I looked at it that way, and they had a lot in common. And I thought, well, I've never seen anyone take advantage of that fact of the character setups being so similar. So we lean into that pretty heavily in the story. It's probably the main reason I wanted to do it was to make this the similarity very clear to people.
Yeah, and so the story starts out with the Quest family traveling to the infamous Area 51, which, as we all know, is where the government keeps the aliens who have crashed into U.S. territory. Um, did you go down a rabbit hole in researching Area 51 for this story, or was it something that you were already like super familiar with?
I mean, I know of Area 51 mainly through cultural osmosis. I mean,
Hmm.
it's if you're in the science fiction or genre stuff, you bump into it numerous times in various things. The research I did was the research that I was to pass on to Sebastian, which is what Area 51 looked like in the early '60s, the early 1960s, which is probably not that much different than it looks today, but we tried to be as accurate as we could.
Yeah, Sebastian Pires, who was your artist for the Johnny Quest story, is drawing this one as well.
Yep,
How's that been going? How has he been doing on the Space Ghost stuff?
pretty damn good. His Space Ghost is fantastic, as I knew it would be, just based on his style. But it's that we actually had a discussion about it before he drew the character. Like because there's different approaches that you can take, and I think we landed on one that is very cool, very iconic. Um, it's it stands on its own in terms of depiction. It's not like a straight Alex Toth rip or a straight Jonathan Lau rip or anything like that. It's definitely its own thing, but it's cool. And I just saw it in color. The first page with Space Ghost on it in color, and it's going to blow people away.
Nice. And like you spoke a little, like you mentioned briefly about being a Space Ghost fan. Like, what is your history with Space Ghost? Did you watch the animated series when you were young, or were you more of a coast to coast guy?
I was trying to remember. I know I saw the original cartoon, sporadically in the when I was a kid, because unlike Johnny Quest, which was a 30-minute show that was made for prime time, Space Ghost was always a Saturday morning thing. It was half of a half-hour show. I think he shared it with Dino Boy or some other thing that didn't stand the test of time. So to get Space Ghost in reruns was a little more haphazard than Johnny Quest, which could just be programmed as a show in the Saturday morning lineup. So I'm sure I just remember it just popping up sometimes on independent TV stations and things like that. So it was not something that was as ubiquitous as Johnny Quest. I I knew about the Coast to Coast show and thought it was clever, but I never really watched it because I didn't have cable TV at the time.
Yeah.
But my end to Space Ghost and the way I'm kind of treating it is through Nexus because
Oh yeah.
Steve Rude, obviously a huge Alex Toth and Space Ghost fan. Space Ghost is a big part of Nexus's DNA, and I was a huge Nexus fan and still am. So in my kind of twisted brain, I thought, well, if I ever get a chance to write Space Ghost, I'll just write him like I'm writing Nexus. I'll just put on just wear my Mike Baron influences right out on my sleeve and do it that way. It's kind of a reverse engineered homage, but it works for the character and it works for the concept. So I don't feel like I'm doing anything to disservice the character. I think it's right in line with how Space Ghost should be done.
Yeah, and related to that, how is the new Space Ghost story that David Pepos has been crafting with with artist Jonathan Lau? How's that worked its way into the Space Quest title?
Well, it's a very cool book. Those guys are taking a smart approach, or they're just writing it. To me, it's like a very this is not a pejorative, but it's a very by the numbers superhero comic.
Mm-hmm.
Every issue is kind of a standalone story. There's generally a new adversary every issue, and they're treating it that way. And obviously it's working for people, so good on them. There's obviously both books are Dynamite. We're all in the same sort of world there, so there's definitely coordination on how what I'm doing fits with what they're doing. But it's meant to be very subtle. I don't want to say too much more about it because it points to a bigger thing that may be going on with all these characters and all these books that share the same licensee.
Ah, nice. And while we're obviously going to see the core characters like Space Ghost and Johnny Quest and Jan and Jace in the crossover, will the extended casts of the series also be making appearances?
Yeah, it's everybody's there. Race and Dr. Quest and actually some other cameos from the old Johnny Quest cartoon show up that weren't in the first story. So I think it'll service all the old time fans of I think both characters.
Excellent. Finally, both series boast some of pop culture's most classic antagonists. Can you tell us something about the villain or villains that Team Quest will be facing?
Well, there's sort of like in the story there's a villain on the Johnny Quest side and a villain on the Space Ghost side. And with Johnny Quest, Dr. Zen is kind of the main bad guy for Johnny Quest, and I used him obviously in the first story. So who I use in this story is more of an homage to a type of adversary that Johnny Quest would face. But they're not new, but they take on a new guise. Now with Space Ghost, it was a lot trickier because, like I said, the monthly series that they're doing right now is really using a lot of the villains. Every issue is a new one, and there's an overarching story with some of the classic villains. So the pickings were slim, but luckily, and I want to leave something, for I don't want to spoil everything, but one of my favorite Space Ghost episodes, I was able to sort of tap into and use inspiration, use that villain and use that villain's hideout and what he does to great effect. And it was luckily somebody that the monthly series was not planning on using. So maybe that means he's more obscure than I thought. But if he's in an episode of the cartoon, to me, it's he's one of the rogues gallery. So that's what we're doing. But I don't want to give it away because not that it's a big reveal or anything, but you want to keep some secrets in the box.
No, absolutely. Well, Joe, thanks for briefly breaking orbit to come and talk to us.
Sure.
Space Ghost Johnny Quest Space Quest #1 blasts off in March, so make sure to pre-order it now, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thanks for watching.